So for the last 6 weeks, we've been kind of on this quarantine journey together. And we've been kind of working some stuff out, and we've been talking about different verses and some different topics. And it's really been just kind of right what we need, or at least what I was needing, I know. And I realized that we're not quite done with this walk down this path yet, but we are starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And I want you to know that I love this lesson that we've been learning through the Psalms of Ascent, and it's such an appropriate time, I think, to be walking through these verses together. And I'm very thankful for the friends and the leaders in my life who have taught me over the years about the history of these Psalms and about these verses and what they really mean. And so I've been excited to share that with you. And so we begin, by learning what it means to lift our eyes to the Lord, right? The maker of all things, and that we need to get our heads up. And then we talked about, lifting our expectations and realizing that God can do all things and that He is faithful and that He is literally holding you together, right? And so this morning, as we move forward in our worship of a Father who knows us and who values us and who loves us, I want us to talk about what it means to lift our hands to Him today. So we have a lot of moments and places in our lives where we lift our hands to the Lord. But I just want to talk about a few that stick out to me today. The first is this. The first place that we lift our hands is a lot of times in desperate hope. Right? Do you know that place? I mean hope on its own, just hope, right, really isn't even a strong enough way to describe it, right? I'm talking about desperate hope. Right? I'm not talking about today, like Brennan running out of his PB&J Uncrustable sandwiches, right, during the pandemic kind of problems. I'm not talking about, man, it's been a super rough day. We didn't get our PB&Js in their nice little package with the crust all cut off in a beautifully shaped circle of yummy goodness type of messed up day. Right? It's deeper than that. It's more than that. And you guys can pray for Brennan if you want to, but that's not the kind of desperation that I'm talking about. I'm talking about desperate hope. Right? Have you felt that? I mean, do you know the place that you get so far down that you're not even sure that you're gonna make it? And I feel like that we've touched on this, right? We've talked about this place in different ways in the last several weeks in these messages together. And you get to a place where you finally hit the bottom, and the only thing for you to do is to look up in the middle of the hope of desperation. You say, God, you've got to come through. You've got to do something. And I can tell you this, growing up, I saw some of my family members, right, get to this place, and I would hear them say those exact words. I would hear them say, I was finally at rock bottom, and I had nowhere to look but up. I remember hearing my mom say that when she hit her place of desperate hope with the Lord. I remember my uncle saying that when he hit his spot of desperate hope with the Lord as well. Right? And that's what God is all about in this psalm. Right? It's about finally making it to the house of God and saying, this is the place where my hope is found. I got to the top of the steps and here He is. Sometimes it takes a little while, right, to work our way through that process. In Psalm 28, verse 1, it says, "To you I call, O Lord, my rock. Do not turn a deaf ear to me." Man, have you ever cried that out? God, I need you. I need you to listen, please. I need you to hear me. And I know there's been times for us maybe that we felt that God wasn't listening, that He wasn't there. All of us have felt that, right? I want you to know that you're not the only person that has ever felt that way. So the psalmist is saying, he's saying, please Don't turn a deaf ear to me. If you remain silent, I will live like those who have gone down to the pit. So hear my cry for mercy as I call to you for help. If you know that road, right, you can say, absolutely, I totally get what David is writing about right here. I know that place. I get it. And so David, right, David, the psalmist, the great worship leader, the king of Israel, a man after God's own heart, the one who killed a bear and killed a lion and killed a giant, that David, he felt what you felt. He's been in that place. And he is saying to God, hear my cry for mercy as I call to you for help, as I lift up my hands to your most holy place. And he was coming from a different spot because he didn't have a way to God like we have through Jesus. So the only thing that he could do was to lift his hands towards Jerusalem and say, my help comes from the Lord. And then you look what happens down in verse 6. He says, praise be to the Lord, for he has mercy or he has heard my cry for mercy, and the Lord is my strength and my shield, right? My heart trusts in him and I am helped. You know, my heart leaps for joy and I will give thanks to him in song. The Lord is the strength of his people, a fortress of salvation for his anointed ones. Save your people and bless their inheritance and be their shepherd and carry them forever. Wow. He is praising God. And here's the thing about praise, right? There's something inside of us, right, that breaks in us as we praise. There's something that lifts, right? And it doesn't always change. It doesn't always get fixed overnight, but it starts when you are at the bottom and you say, look, I'm going to lift my hands in desperate hope to you. I'm crying out to you, God. You have to come through for me somehow. And you're like, whether you change my situation or not, I am still going to praise you right here and right now because of who you are. But he does promise, right, to lift us out of our pits, right? And we can call out to him with a desperate kind of hope that he will somehow make all things new again. And it might not be the way that most often is not the way that we would write it out, the way that we would design it, the way that we would lay it out and want it done. But he does promise to make all things new again, and he will. And then the second way that we can lift our hands today is we lift our hands in surrender. And this is kind of a basic one, right? Some of you listening right now today, you may be on this road that is kind of taking you far from home. And so, maybe you just aren't really, pursuing God right now. In fact, you might be saying, I'm not really interested in him at all. But I just want to remind you right now that of what we've been talking about, and that I want to remind you that when you lift your eyes, that is where you find hope. That when you lift your expectation, you can know that God can do anything, and that you can, when you lift your hands, and for some of us that is in desperate hope, that he is going to come through. But sometimes we are lifting our hands just in surrender. Do you know that? And it's as simple, it's as real as it is in real life, right? You stop where you are, you turn around, and you put your hands in the air, right? Just like if you were being arrested, for going to the park with your kids or to Taco Bell at midnight during the pandemic in some states. That might be a little too soon. I'm sorry about that. But you know what I mean? Just like getting arrested. And so, I'm talking about, surrender in this sense. Surrender in the sense that there is a God in heaven who made me, who loves me, and who has great things for me. And I'm just running from all of that right now. And I need to stop, and I need to turn around, and I need to put my hands in the air, and I need to just surrender to him. I need to stop running. I mean, how important is that for us to know today? It's incredibly important. I know that moment, that time in my life where I just had to stop. I just had to turn around and recognize that there was a Father who loved me and wanted me home. And I had to surrender to him. And so, right, let you, right, and me examine our hearts, examine our ways, and take a good look at the direction that we're headed in right now. And we don't need to punish ourselves or hide in guilt or in our shame. We simply need to turn around and go back home to our Father who is waiting for us. Isn't that amazing? Right? And that can all happen because of Jesus. Right? He is standing before God for us, right? As a way for you and me to come into the presence of the maker of the heavens and the maker of earth. He's opened that door for us. And scripture says, lift up your hands and lift up your heart and return to God. And you might be nervous maybe to turn back to him, and honestly it might be a little bit painful too. But if you look down in this next part of this verse, it says, I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And so I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. And that's what happens, right? When we stop, when we put our hands up, and when we surrender and we return to God. And when we do that, we don't find a God of anger. We find a heart of grace and the salvation that we've been longing for. That hope that we've been looking for, right? That grace that we've been reaching for. And he's waiting. He is looking down the road for you to turn around and come home. And he is just like that father in the story of the prodigal sons we talked about earlier. He is waiting, running to you to embrace you. And the last thing that we're going to talk about today is this. Is we lift our hands in extravagant worship. Now, you see, worship is very much a responsive act. So you and I never decide to worship God just on our own, right? We are always responding to his word or to how he is speaking to our hearts, or we are responding to how he has changed our lives and what we see him doing all around us, and his mercy and his forgiveness and his love and his correction when we need it. And so worship is a response. So what does it mean to worship extravagantly, or to worship in an extravagant way? What is that? Well, I mean, is that just singing a song or lifting your hands in worship? No, it's deeper than that. Extravagance, right, is over the top. It is loving the poor. Extravagance is generosity. Extravagance is serving God. Extravagance is devoting your entire life to following him. And so Jesus said this. He said, if I be lifted up, then I will draw all men unto myself. And Psalm 63 describes worship beautifully. It says this. It says, "You, God, are my God, and earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you, my whole being longs for you, in a dry and parched land where there is no water. And so I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. And on my bed even I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night, because you are my help. And so I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you, and your right hand holds me up." Whew. That's a beautiful way to describe worship. And so as we are moving up the hill, right, we are preparing ourselves as we are moving towards God, right? No matter what state we find ourselves in right now, whether we are praising him or surrendering to him or crying out to him in desperate hope. And sometimes, honestly, it feels like a mix of all three of those things. We're praising him, we're surrendering to him, we're stopping, or we're just crying out to him in a desperate way. Sometimes all those things are mixed together for us. But we need to know this, that there is a Father waiting for us to come home, and that the door is open, and that we can lift our hands and we can respond in praise and adoration of a God who has done so much for us already. And even still, he longs to give us much, much more. And so, as we continue on this road together, right, I want us to remember to always not just during global pandemics or hard times, but do we always need to lift our eyes and our hearts and our expectations and our hands in praise to the God who created all things, to the God who loves you and me and who knitted us together, the God who has done everything that could be done to make a way for you and for me to come home to him. And so we are thankful today for that, and we lift our hands in praise to him for that right now. And so I've been very thankful to spend this time with you, to share these things that have been on my heart, these things that I have learned from other pastors or from friends, or as we've been reading through scripture together, and just it has been amazing for us to kind of walk this journey and this road in the last 7 weeks. And so as we wrap up today, I want you to know that we miss you and we love you. We're looking forward to being together again. And so we are going to be able to gather this week together this next Mother's Day on May the 10th, and we're going to be able to gather back in the church, and it's going to look a little bit different. We have some things we have to do to keep everybody safe, and we're going to be sending out more information on what that's going to look like. But we are excited to gather on Sunday, May the 10th, and we look forward not just to being together, but to celebrating our moms too. And so as we wrap up today, I just want to leave you again with some questions to talk about. And so the first one is this, is I want you to read Psalm chapter 42, verses 1 through 11, and just talk about what these verses say about our need for God. And then number 2, I want you to read Psalm chapter 46, verses 1 through 3, and what do these verses say about where our hope should be? And then number 3, read Psalm chapter 63, verses 1 through 7. And so how do these verses encourage you this morning? So again, we love you. We're looking forward to seeing you again. We hope you have a good day.